Good morning, distinguished ASEAN delegates and all participants. We are going about to start our today's event, last session, within 5 minutes. So I hope ASEAN delegates who has not coming yet to be coming to the ballroom. And then welcome to participants who's joining virtually via our link Zooms. We will be having our last session on 9:15. Thank you. All right. Good morning, distinguished ASEAN delegates, all participants, journalists. Today we are going to have our last sessions for 2 days workshop on broadcasting in the age AI disruption by Southeast Asia Regulatory Authorities Forum. We had our previous sessions yesterday, inviting speakers in regulator perspective to discuss the regulatory aspects on how we can deal with it. And then our own second session, we invited the broadcasters from public TV broadcasting and then private TV station from Indonesia. They shared about the practices on how Indonesian TV stations also govern the AI so far. And today we are going to discuss furthermore with Mr. Jamark. We hope that he can facilitate us to give the formulation on how ASEAN member countries formulating the AI in terms of, again, regulations and then the broadcasting perspective, and then how we can also protect our audience. As mentioned in our, what do you call it, the baseline study report yesterday that I already presented to you. So after the third session this morning, it will be followed by the closing keynote that will be delivered by Mr. Sukamta, PhD. He is Vice Chairman Commission 1, our lawmakers from Commission 1. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Wisnu Tribowo as a moderator for this session. Mr. Wisnu, stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished delegates, respected experts, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to moderate this panel discussion on strategic recommendation for ASEAN broadcasting regulators and broadcaster. Artificial intelligence is no longer a future possibility for broadcasting. It is already reshaping regulation, production, and public trust across our region. The challenge before us is not whether to adopt AI, but how to govern it responsibly, inclusively, and sustainably. This session is therefore designed with a clear purpose to extract concrete policy relevant recommendations that can guide ASEAN cooperation, inform national regulatory frameworks, and support broadcaster in navigating AI adoption while upholding the public interest. I invite our distinguished expert, Mr. Jamark, please, to speak not only from experience, but also with an eye toward practical guidance that can be translated into regulatory and institution action. Okay, good morning, Mr. Jamark. Mr. Jamark is media advisor in Philippines. Mr. Jamark has long credentials in journalism as a journalist, and now is an expert and advisor. Mr. Jamark will provide insight regarding his experiences as a practitioner, professional, and also an advisor. Time and floor is yours, Mr. Jamal.
All right, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Mr. Vishnu. Thank you for having me here, and congratulations on this event. Congratulations, Mr. Amin and the KPI team on staging this event. I think this is a very important conversation that we're having, given the possibilities and threats of AI that it poses for not just the whole broadcasting industry, but in society in general. I had a few slides in reaction to yesterday's baseline reports. So these are my reactions to the baseline report. It's an excellent report. It's an excellent start. Although I did identify some questions I wanted to raise, and hopefully this morning we will have the opportunity to discuss them more fully to guide us for the next step of this conversation for broadcasters, for regulators, even for regional bodies who will develop policies and guidelines for managing this technology. So before we get started, I wanted to give a background about myself. It's a unique background, I think. I started my career in technology. My undergraduate major was in computer science, did a master's degree in technology management. But midway through my tech career, I made what is either the best or the worst decision of my life. I decided to become a journalist. And so I ended up working in media. And I ended up becoming editor-in-chief and head of digital media for GMA News in the Philippines, which is the largest broadcaster in the Philippines. I was working on the digital side, and I was handling all the social media publishing. I was handling all the video publishing for the platforms for the largest broadcaster in the Philippines. So I was dealing with big tech companies and our relationship as a broadcaster with the big tech companies. I left in 2023 to do a fellowship at Harvard University. And it was the best time to be at Harvard because everyone was talking about AI. It had only been a few months after the release of ChatGPT. And everyone on campus was investigating this technology. So everywhere you went, that was the conversation. AI was the conversation. But there were very few conversations in the context of, number one, media organizations. Everyone was talking about the technology without the context of media companies. And number two, no one was talking about AI in the context of countries like the Philippines and Indonesia and the rest of the global south. So people were talking about AI only in the context of the US and China and geopolitical conflict and AGI, but no one was thinking about countries from our part of the world, right? So it sort of fell on me, given my background as a media practitioner and my background as a technologist, to study the possible impact of this technology, both on media organizations and countries here in this region and across the global south, right? So I've seen how uneven the potential of AI is, given the lack of support for languages, for example, for people who live in these parts of the world, especially with Indonesia and the Philippines. We have dozens, if not hundreds, of regional languages that these AI systems do not support. And so after I came back, I'm based in Manila, but I've been working with organizations across Asia Pacific, and I advise them on their projects in AI and in digital transformation. And so I've seen firsthand the challenges that they face, and I've seen the opportunities that this technology could bring to them. Now, I read the baseline report that Mr. Amin presented yesterday, and I had a couple of thoughts. I think one of the biggest gap, and Mr. Agus and Dr. Agus and Mr. Amat yesterday talked about this. There was a lack of mention about platform policy and dealing with big tech platforms. I think when we talk about developing policy and regulations as regards broadcasters and as regards AI, the conversation should start with how we deal with platforms, right? We've seen this movie before. I was editor-in-chief at GMA when the social media revolution happened, and we know how bad that was for media organizations, even broadcasters, right? Because what happened with social media and digital media was that most of the advertising revenue shifted from traditional broadcast to digital media, wherein it was the big tech companies who were in control of the means of being able to advertise. So we need to be thinking more about the relationship between regulators, broadcasters, and the big tech platforms. I posted this picture online last year, and this is a picture of all the media executives from organizations with whom OpenAI signed licensing agreements. OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT, and they've only signed content licensing deals with media companies from the United States and Europe, right? That's why all the faces there are white faces, mostly men, some women. There's a guy with 2 telephones. I don't know what he's doing. But we are not in the radar of these big tech companies right now when it comes to licensing our content, our media. And I think this is a very big problem that we need to figure out how to address. What we saw during the era of social media was that media companies were dealing with social media companies individually. And that was a problem because you had less bargaining power if you're doing it individually. We've seen models like in Canada and Australia where there was collective negotiations with big tech companies and with media companies, which allowed them to get more out of those deals with these big tech companies. And so, as regulators, as government policy workers, I think there is a need to study frameworks for how media companies can extract the most value out of licensing deals with big tech companies, especially with AI. Media broadcast companies in the United States have had different approaches to dealing with big tech companies. A couple of media companies have sued AI providers like Midjourney, which is an AI image generator. They've sued them for copyright violation. Midjourney is not a big tech company, and I think this is very strategic, what Disney and Universal did, because they went after the small AI model first. And then the plan is that if they win a legal victory against the small company, then they can go after the big company, right? But they're also doing it the other way. Walt Disney Company has also reached an agreement with OpenAI to enable users of OpenAI Sora video generation to be able to generate video using characters from Disney, right? And so there is a path wherein broadcasters can actually work with big tech companies, get compensation for intellectual property that they own. So far, this has been the only model for broadcasters around the world when it comes to licensing with big tech companies. So the question I'm posing after reading the baseline report is that what can regulators do to protect broadcasters and their intellectual property from exploitation by platforms, right? And I think there is a very interesting place for broadcasters here in this region, in ASEAN, because one of the gaps for big tech with their AI models is the lack of support for regional languages. It works very well with English. It works sort of fine with national languages like Filipino and Bahasa Indonesia. But it has very poor support for regional languages, right? Those that are what they call a slow resource. So who has that data, right? Who has the data where you have the script and you have the aired version of that script, the audio of that script, even the video of that script? It is broadcasters, right? So that data can actually be really valuable for many tech companies, whether it's US tech companies or Chinese or regional tech companies here in ASEAN. That can be very, very valuable data. Now, suppose Sam Altman or Mark Zuckerberg hit their heads tomorrow and they decide, oh, I'm a changed person and I want to pay broadcasters in Southeast Asia for their data instead of stealing all their data. Are we ready to do business? Right? Do we have frameworks for being able to turn the broadcasts, the videos that we have, the scripts that we have, into a format that can be sold to big tech companies or even smaller tech companies here in Southeast Asia? Right? Do we have frameworks for that? Do we have the capacity for that? Right? And who's going to pay for that investment to turn our archives into a format that can be ingested and bought and sold by these big tech companies? Right? Are we ready to do business? Right? So that is something, I think we all know the answer is no. Right? Many broadcasters in Southeast Asia don't even have digitized versions of their archives, right? We don't have organized scripts, right? I don't know if we saved our scripts, right? But this is a question we should start thinking about, right? And I think this is a key gap that I saw that's not included in the baseline. I started out with data because I think this is the asset that we have that big tech does not have. And this is our bargaining chip when it comes to dealing with them. So I think once you think about data as this very valuable thing, the next step is to build infrastructure to be able to take advantage of this data, perhaps coming up with a data commons, a repository of common data for the public good, and to enable technology collaboration. Now, there's two parts to this. First, the data and then the technology. The data will be regional, will be national, right? Many Filipino audiences won't have use for data from Indonesian broadcasters, right? But the technology that you will use to take advantage of that data can be the same, right? And so there needs to be collaboration both on the level of the data, a national collaboration, and then a collaboration that's more regional for technology. Why is this important? I had a very interesting experiment last year that's basically turning a long-form investigative feature that was written in print. There was no video, there was no voiceover. I turned it into a 33-minute animated video documentary where all the illustrations, all the animations, all the voices, even the music was generated using AI. It's an interesting project because if I had to do it with humans, it would have taken me weeks to do it. Um, it only took me 2 days to create. Had a hint of a Filipino accent. And that was a marker for them to know that, oh, this is very human-like and this is actually very acceptable, right? And that kind of nuance only comes from when you train it in a local context. Even if it's speaking in English, if it had an American accent, the video would not have resonated with Filipino audiences. Right? So imagine that kind of nuance where you are able to get that accent into your AI system. And those data, those nuances, can only come from the data that broadcasters have. So, I was part of this working group, this study, where transcription and translation is one of the most used use cases for AI in journalism and broadcasting. But what the study found was that there's really a narrow range of standard American English dialects and accents for which these tools work perfectly, right? So the support out of the box for these AI systems is limited to a narrow slice of the world, only American English and their dialects. Okay. So there's very little data online that can be used to train these AI models. So again, this data exists in the archives of broadcasters, especially in this region. Across the world, there are examples already of in Africa and in Latin America, where some media organizations are leading efforts to make AI more inclusive. What they're doing is they're actually building data sets. What's interesting with these projects, this is from the Republic in Africa and El Surti in Latin America, is that they are dealing with oral languages. So they're compiling archives for oral languages for better support for AI so that these can be more exclusive. So when I talk about having data commons, this is what I'm talking about. Media companies, with the help of regulators, can actually take a leading role in making AI more inclusive and having more support for languages in which the people work in and in which people understand. So my question for this part is, how can regulators foster an environment that allows more inclusive AI that can take advantage of the resources that broadcasters in this region have? I think this is a question that needs to be answered both at the national level and hopefully because of the cost of the technology, I hope there can be more collaboration at the regional level, sharing of best practices of how to foster this kind of environment. Another gap I noticed in the baseline report, and again, sorry, Mr. Amin, I'm not criticizing there. It's a very good report. I'm just pointing out some of the gaps. There is a very little focus on audiences when it comes to how they accept AI technology. I wanted to highlight again my project, right? Even though journalists thought that illustrations were powerful and compelling, the video did not resonate with a lot of audiences, especially with artists, because of their concerns about the intellectual property implications of using generative AI illustrations. Right? So if you're not familiar with it, AI image generators trained a lot of their models on unlicensed data. And so artists do not, at least in the Philippines, they did not like the fact that we use generative AI because they felt that it infringed on the work of many artists. That's why even though the regular person thinks the illustrations are compelling, artists were like, no, please don't do this. Okay. And so this is something that we learned, right? That audiences, they're not too keen on this. Now, yesterday, we had delegates from across ASEAN talking about AI avatars and talking heads and characters. And I wanted to highlight the case of Maya and Marco, who were AI sports casters that were launched by GMA, the organization I used to work for. Please don't tell them I used them as an example. They launched this after I had already left the company when I was doing my fellowship. So they thought it was a cool project to have AI sportscasters, but the reaction from the public was not good, right? Journalists were asking whether they are at risk for being fired because they could be replaced by AI. A lot of the public are saying, you have so many good human sportscasters. Why are you using AI sportscasters for this project, right? And then they did it, a lot of the public didn't like the quality and the ability to emulate human behavior, and they found it soulless, right? Now, this is not universal across the region or across Asia Pacific. I've worked with a newsroom in India who regularly publish news using an AI newsreader, and their videos get hundreds of thousands of views every day. And I asked the person who was in charge, how were you able to pull that off without a strong reaction from audiences? And they did something very smart. He said, oh, well, we started by only asking the AI newsreader to read news that's about AI. And so the people who would view that news are actually those who are already very interested in AI and who are more open to having the news read to them by an AI newsreader. And so when we think of the broadcast industry, I think a lot of the efforts that we do should be guided with what our audiences want and what our audiences need. And so that should also inform the regulation that we put when it comes to AI. And it's not an easy answer to come up with because it's different across different regional contexts, right? And so this is a gap that I saw in the baseline report. I hope we are able to address that, perhaps with more studies on audience attitudes. There was one study, I didn't share it, there was one study that said that AI newsreaders are the least trusted use case for AI among audiences. But the problem with that study was it involved respondents from Australia and Europe. I don't know of any study so far that deals with Southeast Asia. I imagine with the Philippines, they won't like AI newsreaders, but I don't know about Indonesia. Our colleagues from Thailand yesterday talked about AI avatars. I hope they also come up with a study about audience attitudes, about different use cases of AI. Newsreaders are an extreme example, but it's good to study the audience about what is acceptable use, what is acceptable disclosure about AI, and what we can and we can't do when it comes to this, so that we are guided by audiences. I think the role of regulators is very important here because this is something that a broader group should be able to study instead of just individual broadcasters or individual media organizations. right? So my question for this part is how can broadcasters and regulators take into account audience attitudes when drawing up AI regulation and policies? And I thought this was a big gap, right? Because we asked the broadcasters, we asked the regulators, but we're not having that conversation with audiences about what they want in terms of use cases and also in terms of disclosure, right? And we might be surprised by what we find when we talk to our audiences. Next, I want to highlight the need to share use cases and best practices. And I want to highlight that because I think broadcasters there's a particular vulnerability for broadcasters when it comes to AI and for misinformation. So on the left, there's an image. This is an article for Nieman Lab. And you've probably seen a version of this on Indonesian social media, where scammers are using deepfakes of broadcast journalists, of newsreaders, of newscasters, to peddle scam products online. This has happened in the Philippines. And when I was at Harvard, I talked to a Canadian broadcaster, and she said there's also a deepfake of her on Facebook selling scam products online. Right? And so this is a global problem for broadcast journalists. Why? Because there's a lot of trust in broadcast journalists. And so these scammers know if they put the face on of a broadcast journalist in their deepfake video, they are able to scam more people online, right? So what kind of protection in terms of regulation do we have for broadcasters when their deepfake is used to sell scams, right? Do we have enough regulation? Do we have enough capacity to go after the scammers doing it? Or at least compel the platforms to take down or to disclose the source of these scams, right? And it's ongoing. Like I said, it happened to broadcast journalists in the Philippines. It happened to broadcasters from Canada. In this particular example, in this article, they were talking to broadcasters from India. So imagine this is a global problem. In fact, it might be, the people behind this might be a transnational organization, right? And when we're talking about regional cooperation, this is a problem that might need regional cooperation to address. Okay. The other image, the image on the left, this is from a news report, again from GMA. The image on the left is AI generated, and it is an image of a truck on fire. And the image on the right is the original image of the truck. And this is particularly dangerous as misinformation comes, because it was sent to firefighters from social media to their hotlines, and 4 fire trucks went to that area to respond to a burning truck, right? And I thought for myself when I saw this news, this is so difficult. Because can you ask firefighters to fact check images that are shared to them? Right? When every minute is an emergency. Right? And so 4 fire trucks went to the scene and they weren't able to fight. Obviously, there was no fire. And they were investigating who sent that image. Now, what's interesting about this is that there's actually already a Philippine law that prohibits, that penalizes people for wrongful reports to firefighters, so that scams like this or pranks like this can be avoided, right? But there needs to be more awareness of the potential of AI for this kind of misinformation. And I highlighted this because this is hard, right? Because it is an emergency and you can't ask people looking at their phone to first fact check, do fact checking. So, what are steps being done to address issues of misinformation with regard to AI generated media? Both tech and media companies are working on solutions in terms of using AI for information integrity. Across the world, media organizations are building databases, compiling their fact checks, and using AI to find patterns and to easily find information about the kind of misinformation and disinformation that they are encountering. In this example, it's a newsroom from the Philippines called Vera Files that is a fact-checking newsroom. They created an AI system called Seek to use Gen AI to be able to search their archives for to do fact checks. So you can actually go to their site and check something, and AI will answer using their archives. So when I talk about using common data, this is another example of the type of archives that media organizations already have that could be empowered using AI. When it comes to platforms, Google is ahead of this. They have the best image generator called Nano Banana. It's built into Gemini. They have the best video generator called Veo, also built into Gemini. And the great thing they did, because they saw that their image and video generators were getting so good, they embedded this technology called Synth ID to be able to do an invisible watermark on media that's generated using their AI generators. Now, I'm surprised a lot of people don't know about this. But when you see an image that you suspect may be generated by AI, all you have to do is take a screenshot of it, go to Gemini, and you can ask Gemini, is it AI generated? And it will check that digital watermark, that synth ID, and it will tell you whether parts of that image were altered using AI. Right? So this is a very effective tool already. Now, what's the problem? The problem is because of the rivalry among big tech companies. Google has made this technology open, but OpenAI doesn't want to put it in their image generator. I don't know for what reason. Grok, I know Indonesia and Malaysia and the Philippines has had issues with Grok, with its potential to, do nudified images. Grok doesn't have any digital watermarking systems. OpenAI's ChatGPT doesn't have any digital watermarking systems. So it comes back to my first point. When dealing with platforms, right, is this something we can compel them to do? Can we do it at the national level? Maybe not. Can we do it at the regional level? Perhaps it would be stronger to do it. But this is very powerful technology that platforms can already build in to their systems, but they're just not doing it because they don't care. Right? And so there needs to be more engagement with these platforms to make all our lives easier for us. Right? So, again, my question for this is how can we foster regional collaboration for best use cases, for fact-checking databases, and to be able to compel platforms to do what we want them to do, to implement technology that can help society and to mitigate the harms that can be caused by AI for misinformation. And I think that's the end of my presentation, but that's not the end of our conversation. Would be happy to take questions from Mr. Vishnu.
Thank you, Mr. J. Mark. That's was insightful. I mean, you brought a study, right, from your report. I mean, you drew an even playing field in now in a media environment between platform companies, the big one, and the media broadcaster or media institution, and even the gap is widening between Western media and non-Western media. You highlight. Okay, now we can take question from the floors. Those who are in here and also online through Zoom. But I can wait, but we can start discussion. This is a kickstart. Okay, I want to know your perspective because you mentioned about to what extent AI does help genuinely for media institution, and to what extent the AI threaten independence of the media. You mentioned about the workers, professional, it's replaced by AI, and public trust. Because a few studies in the Western, if one article, let's say news article, there are a disclosure and disclosure, the public audience perceive is less credible than those who wrote by the real journalists. What do you think the benefits and the expectations of using AI in the industry?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It's funny that you mentioned the disclosure paradox, right?
Yep.
That if you actually disclose that you used AI for parts of your reporting, that it actually causes people to trust you less,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
But what we've seen in social media like LinkedIn and Facebook, uh, you see pages all of a sudden they're very good in English,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And they are able to write 5 articles a day,
Hmm.
right? And you know, how did they get so good all of a sudden? And if you actually read the output, oh, you see M dashes,
Yes.
you see the negation, assertion, sentence construction of AI, and you know that they're using AI. They just don't disclose it. I think it's we are navigating this journey with the audience
Yes.
at the same time. So for now, yes, let's disclose. But I think eventually the audience will accept that, oh, this is part of our process, right? Because when we think of journalism, for example, what do we sell? What we sell isn't the content, right? What we sell is the credibility. When we post something online or we publish something on air or we print something in the newspaper, what we're telling to the public is, we fact check this. You know this is true because we this went through an editorial process,
Yes.
and we know that we can stand by this story, right? If you don't like this story, you can sue me. My name is there,
Yep.
right? And if I get something wrong, I will write an apology, right? And so, being able to produce that story, we use different tools. But the essential part of publishing when it comes to trust is, you can trust me because of my reputation. You can trust me that the thing that I would put in my on-air report or in my print article is true. So I think it's going to evolve down the line. I use a lot of AI tools for investigative journalism. And it's a question that's been asked to me at those workshops. And I would tell them, it's funny why we need to disclose the use of AI when we don't need to disclose the use of Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel when doing our reports, right? When we do investigative reports. I think once the public becomes more familiar and more comfortable with the use, and as media organizations are able to meaningfully explain the parts of the workflow in which they use AI, they don't use AI for everything, but uh, once they're able to do that, I think the trust
Yep.
will come back even with AI disclosure,
Mm.
and the comfort level of
Yeah.
audiences will also come back.
Okay, that's interesting. Uh, Mas Amin, we have an update from Mas Amin, Pak Amin.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Jamark and then Mas Wisnu. Uh, Mr. Sukamta is already joining us through our link Zooms. Assalamualaikum, Pak Sukamta. Thank you for joining our event. Can you hear me, Pak Sukamta?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yes, I can.
Okay, so thank you for joining our today's event, Pak Sukamta. So before you give the remarks, let me explain first our event. So it's like a today's event, Pak Sukamta. We are discussing about broadcasting in the AI disruption era. So we invited many distinguished speakers and attended by ASEAN delegates, Pak Sukamta. And since yesterday, we discussed about AI in terms of regulatory perspective. We invite Ministry of Communication and Digital, Pak Mr. Gunawan Abdullah, and then we invite also Professor Kachung to discuss in terms of audience perspective and academia. And then on the second session, we invited the broadcasters from public broadcastings, TVRI, and then from the private broadcasting industry from ATVSI. And then today's on our third session or last session, we try to formulate what kind of recommendation that we can give to among ASEAN member countries regarding the issue of AI in broadcasting sectors. Now, we would like to listen from Pak Sukamta because we aware and we know that Commission 1 are discussing about the revision of broadcasting law. And then we truly hope, of course, that the upcoming new regulation will also adapt the, AI into our regulations. So without further ado, Pak Sukamta, I would like to give the stage on you, please.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning, everyone. Distinguished Chairperson of the Indonesian Broadcasting Communication, Honorable Representative of the Ministry of Communication and Digital Affairs, esteemed head and delegate of broadcasting and multimedia regulatory authorities from ASEAN member state, distinguished expert, colleagues, and participants. It is an honor for me to address this regional workshop at a time when artificial intelligence is reshaping the broadcasting landscape across our region and beyond. AI has rapidly moved from being a supporting technology into becoming a core driver of content creation, distribution, and audience engagement. Transformation, transformation is not unique to any single country. It is a shared region experience and therefore requires shared regional reflection and cooperation. This workshop is timely because it allows us as regulators and policymakers to collectively reflect on how broadcasting law and governance must evolve while ensuring that innovation continues to serve the public interest. AI and broadcasting opportunities accompanied by new responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, AI offers clear opportunities for ASEAN broadcasting sectors, more efficient production processes, wider access to information, and new creative possibilities for content producers. At the same time, AI introduces new responsibilities for regulators and lawmakers. Access to our region, we observe similar emerging concerns, such as uh, the rise of um, synthetic and manipulated content, and rapid spread of AI-assisted disinformation, and also increasing reliance on algorithm-driven content distribution. This development challenge traditional regulatory approaches and call for updated legal and institutional frameworks that remain adaptive and future-oriented. In discussing AI and broadcasting, the concept of digital sovereignty deserves careful and balanced consideration. Digital sovereignty does not imply isolation for or technological nationalism. Rather, it reflects the shared aspiration of ASEAN member states to ensure that public communication spaces remain accountable and transparent. National laws are also respected within domestic jurisdiction, and public interest is safeguarded amid global digital flows. Today, much of the content consumed by our audiences is distributed through cross-border digital platforms. This reality highlights the importance of ensuring that such platforms operate in a manner consistent with national laws and regional values, while continuing to support innovation and openness. From a legislative standpoint, the revision of broadcasting law should be seen as an opportunity to modernize governance, not to constrain technological progress. In this regard, several principles merit attention. First, clarity on the role of AI and broadcasting. Broadcasting law should recognize AI as part of the broadcasting ecosystem, both as a tool for innovation and a source of new regulatory consideration. Second, transparency and accountability. As algorithms increasingly influence content visibility, regulators should be empowered to promote transparency in content moderation and recommendation system consistent with national legal framework. And third, fair and balanced treatment of digital platform. Platforms that operate across borders and engage local audiences should be encouraged to align with domestic regulation, ethical standard, and public interest objective. Fourth, institutional capacity building. Regulatory authorities require adequate technical capacity to understand and respond to AI-driven broadcasting practices. Distinguished participants, the challenges posed by AI and broadcasting are inherently transnational. No single country can address them in isolation. ASEAN, therefore, has an important role to play in facilitating dialogue among regulators, sharing best practices and policy experiences, and fostering mutual understanding of regulatory approaches. This workshop provides an excellent platform to explore such principles for AI governance in broadcasting, cooperative responses to disinformation and harmful content, and mechanism for capacity development among regulatory institutions. Such cooperation will enhance regulatory effectiveness while respecting the diversity of legal system within ASEAN. Indonesia approaches this discussion with humility and openness to learning from regional partners. As a large and diverse digital society, Indonesia continues to refine its legal and institutional framework to protect the public interest, to strengthen digital governance, and also to ensure coherence between broadcasting regulation, data protection, and digital ecosystem policies. We view regional dialogue not as a forum for comparison, but as an opportunity for mutual learning and sharing progress. Ladies and gentlemen, AI will continue to shape the future of broadcasting. Our task is not to resist change, but to guide it responsibly. Through thoughtful legislative update, effective regulatory cooperation, and sustained regional dialogue, we can ensure that innovation flourishes, public trust is maintained, and broadcasting continues to serve democratic and societal values. I myself sincerely hope that this workshop will produce practical and forward-looking recommendations that contribute not only to national reform, but also to stronger ASEAN broadcasting community. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Sukamta. Amin Sabana speaking, Pak Sukamta. So there are some
Thank you, Pak.
commissioners as well here in this room, Bu Alia, Pak Made, and then Pak Hasrul Hasan. And then of course the distinguished ASEAN delegates and journalists are listening to your insightful keynote remarks, Pak Sukamta. Regarding your just mentioned about the recommendation, actually we planned to hand over the recommendations on our today's event to you if you coming physically, but since you're joining online, we will sending to you the documents, Pak Sukamta, later. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Pak Amin.
Okay.
We're waiting for it.
Okay.
I'm looking forward.
Okay. Thank you again, Pak Sukamta, for participating in our event. I know you're very busy, and then we hope that we can give a strong recommendation to our lawmakers during their discussion on broadcasting law revision. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I go back this
Waalaikumsalam.
session to Mas Wisnu.
Thank you, Mas Amin. Okay, can we proceed to our discussion? Okay, the last we discussed about the practice, right? What are the advantage and disadvantage of using AI? Okay, do we have question from the floor? I mean, online, offline? Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wisnu. And then thank you, Mr. Jamak, for very insightful presentations. So since yesterday we already had a lot discussion on broadcasting in the AI disruptions era, and then we had and listened many informations on it from the regulators, from the broadcasters. Actually, what I'd like to discuss with you, regarding the same guideline that we can encounter, among the ASEAN member countries. I know it seems maybe very ambitious if we can have like the Digital Service Act or Digital Market Act like what European Union have now. Is it possible maybe we together have the same guideline, if not in regulations, so we can discuss with ASEAN Secretariat, maybe can facilitate the guideline that can be issued for the ASEAN member countries. That's my, you can take it as a concern or question. Is it possible if we can apply as well, such as the Digital Service or Digital Market Act, like in European Union. And another thing is, as mentioned in the baseline study report, we also need to have cross-border AI monitoring initiatives among Southeast Asia. So can you give us the way what kind of initiative that we can start on to formulate this monitoring initiative? That's the two things that I'd like to discuss with you. Thank you.
Right. So the first is whether ASEAN can come up with something similar to the Digital Services Act and the Digital Market Act. To be honest, I don't know. I don't know when the last time ASEAN as a bloc was able to negotiate something similar. But certainly, there is a need to do these kinds of conversations and negotiations with tech platforms collectively. Uh, and it can't happen only in a single industry, not in a broadcast industry. It needs to happen at a national level, if not a regional level. I think right now is a good opportunity for ASEAN to do it, whether as a group or sharing best practices, because the big platforms are all trying to get into ASEAN with their investments in things like data centers, with what they're trying to do to increase their footprint in the region, right? And so that's outside the scope of this workshop, but that could be a conversation that we have with our counterparts with other departments who are involved in those conversations, to also be thinking about regulations involving media and protecting the well-being of our audiences. Um, so whether or not we do it at the ASEAN level, honestly, I don't see that happening. But perhaps the different countries can copy each other, can share best practices when it comes to regulating, crafting regulations and frameworks for these kinds of laws to deal with with big tech platforms. Regarding your second question, I think there's potential for AI monitoring, specifically for things like disinformation, for scams, for example, by building, as I mentioned, common data sets, open data sets that can be shared by different media organizations, whether they're broadcast or digital or print. AI makes it easy for for you to be able to search a kind of scam in the Philippines that may also be happening in Indonesia, right? Because AI would translate and find different similarities even across different languages. And so that kind of effort is actually made easier by AI systems. But the key is compiling the data in the same format, right? And so that's really the key to have someone lead those efforts to build data commons across organizations, uh, across the region.
Thank you, Pak Amin, for brought up issue of regional cooperation. I mean, best practices is from you, of course. I would like to elaborate further. Do you think ASEAN as a region, right, as a cooperation region, should identify minimum principle for regulation that can be applied to different contexts, regardless national differences, of course, economic differences. Do you think we can identify minimum principle that we can agree upon
Definitely, the short answer to the question is yes. The longer answer is, how would that be different from common principles like that, say, the UN or UNESCO would come up with, right? Where if we're talking about common principles, best practices, why limit it to ASEAN, right?
Mm.
I think the value of of having these best practices for ASEAN uh, is the shared experiences.
Mm.
I think we already have so many baseline guidelines created by UN. I think the value that ASEAN member states could bring to this conversation is the actual shared experience on the ground. Like, how do you build a data common? How do you, uh, what's the best way of negotiating with platforms? What is the best way to uh, create an environment for broadcasters to monetize or productize their archives? So it's more about the nitty gritty, because if we're talking about just general guidelines, we have so many general guidelines already. And so I think it would be more valuable to have people working on the ground coming together in workshops like this and sharing those experiences. I think that would be really valuable.
Okay, thank you. Do you have other response from the floor or other questions? Yes.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Termak. It's very amazing talk. And I have a question that as you came from the computer science background, so when it's come to media, there were things that computer and AI seem to be just the supporter. Yeah, so I would like to ask that is it necessary for the broadcaster to have AI unit? Not outsourced, but it is like making for the AI unit, especially in the broadcaster. And another question that I would like to ask uh, is it necessary for the broadcaster to have fact-checking team as well, like form the team, not just only for the news, but it's for the spreading for the public as well. Thank you so much.
Okay. For your question first, thank you for your question. I think for the AI unit, there are two things, right? One is the AI research, the actual research into the models and development of those models. I don't know if every broadcaster can afford to have an AI unit doing basic research into AI models. And so on that end, I think it needs to be a collective effort, a shared effort, whether at the national level or an organization level among media companies. That's why I talked about technology collaborations and data commons. But I think there's a lot of value that can be unlocked if media companies, broadcast companies have AI practitioners or experts in their teams. And it doesn't have to be computer scientists or data engineers. A lot of the work that I've done in designing AI tools, and this is the promise of AI, is that even if you're not a tech expert, you should be able to use AI to create systems that work for you, right? And so there needs to be people inside the media organization who understand the technology, who understand their own workflow, and who could understand and design systems that could enhance their workflow to take the best advantage of AI. In my experience, when working with media organizations, uh, the best teams are those who actually do the work, who do the editorial work, because they understand the flow of their work, and they understand which parts of the work can be outsourced to the AI, and which part of the work requires the human to be able to do the loop, right? And that requires an understanding of what AI can and cannot do, right? And understanding its capability and also understanding the risk so that you're not able, you are able to mitigate those risks. I'm sorry, can you repeat the second question, please?
So the second question is like, is it necessary for the broadcaster to have the fact-checking team before launching anything to public as well?
Uh, if they can afford it, it's always nice. At GMA, we didn't have a fact-checking unit, but if there was a big story, of course, we had the skills to be able to fact-check. So I think media organizations need to develop that skill to be able to fact-check. If they see a synthetic image, they should be able to use the right technology and also use their journalism skills to call up sources to verify, because that's what we do as journalists anyway. uh, there is also in the Philippines and across the region media organizations who specialize in fact checking already. So to answer your question, no, it's not necessary to have a separate fact-checking team within a broadcast organization, but fact-checking should be a skill developed within that organization. And the other piece of it is that there needs to be a capability to put all those fact checks into a database because that is very valuable data, especially when you compile them in one place and you use AI to be able to search and find patterns in them.
Okay, so I understand that we need the data set or database for checking the verify the fact. But as we know nowadays that the deep fake or the fake news is spread like very fast, and they can just make 1 hour for many photo. And it's very difficult sometimes even you use the tool and undetected. So that is could be something that the technology come to take the part in, because we have to fight AI with AI. But if we use only people, I think it could be like the burden for them as well. That is a huge of information.
Right. I think, yes, we need to fight AI with AI, but we need to fight AI with everything that AI misinformation with all the tools at our disposal. So, like I said, if they generated that deepfake using a Google image generator, it's easy to check. But what if they use ChatGPT to generate that, right? You won't be able to check it with Google, and so then you have to use the human side. The other part is our role as broadcasters in public service when it comes to media and information literacy. Um, there is a term that experts in the United States call the liar's dividend, wherein once people are aware that it's easy to fake videos and photos, people can try to escape accountability by claiming that something real that's out there is fake, right? So that's another problem. Uh, when I do my workshops, I have this very optimistic view. I don't know if it's misguided or not. But I tell them, now that you can tell your audience not to believe in everything you see on social media, right? I think it's an opportunity for broadcasters and media companies and journalists to say, don't believe everything, but when it comes from us, you can believe it because you trust us, right? And so it's an opportunity for us to win back our audiences. That we say that you don't believe everything you see on Facebook or Viber or Line, but go to our website or go to our social media channels, and we'll tell you what's true, right? And so, yes, we need to use the AI tools, but also we need to go back to the core of what we do as broadcasters and journalists, where we inform the public, right? And I think it's an opportunity to tell them, no, with AI now, it's easy to be fooled. So if you want the truth, follow your trusted sources, right? And so that's always an uphill battle, but I think it's worth fighting.
Thank you. I mean, this is interesting topic. You mentioned about fighting AI with AI, right? Our discussion, but it is related to broadcaster capacity or media capacity and resources. How do we prevent AI from widening the gap between large broadcaster and smaller or public broadcaster, right? Because you need investment in AI. It's not cheap technology. It's expensive. How do you prevent? I mean, yeah, it's big media. It's getting bigger, and the small media it's will be diminished if we treat AI as a capacity to improve media performance.
Yes, actually, that's a very legitimate concern. Um, I think language is a big gap that worsens that issue, uh, especially if you're a public broadcaster in the rural parts of ASEAN, right? Where the language that you use isn't supported by AI. So it's hard. That's why there needs to be support from at the national level to have a more inclusive AI. The other part is the potential of AI to reduce the load in terms of workflow. So in the Philippines, I work with small newsrooms. We're talking about radio stations with 10 people or 5 people, right? Uh, and AI can really help them with their work. And for newsrooms like that, it would be okay for them to use AI generated voices, for example, or AI generated images, because their audience would understand that they don't have enough resources to be able to produce more. And so with smart use of AI, they can actually make their workflows better. Like the GMA, which is the largest broadcaster in the Philippines, they would be crucified. They were already crucified if they used AI news readers. But if you're a small, tiny radio station in the middle of nowhere, audiences would be fine. They would understand. So I think there is also a potential for AI to democratize the work, um, but there needs to be more training, more capacity building. That's what I've been doing the past 2 years. I've been going around Asia Pacific and the Philippines trying to at least get them up to speed by how AI could help their workflows.
Okay, this is one good news. Other response from the floor or maybe from the online Zoom? Do we have questions from the Zoom? No? From the audience in here? Okay, do we still have time? Do we still have time? Okay, okay, before I close the session, I would like to have your insight regarding the policy framework, right? If we can propose one. Uh, should we treat AI as a technology, content, or institutional practice? Because if we define AI as technology, we will see AI just a technology, neutral technology. If we see AI as a content provider or content developer, we will treat differently and also institutionalized practice. Do you think which perspective we can use to build a legal framework to treat AI?
I think you need to look at it both ways. The first, when you think about AI as a technology, uh, you need to think about it in terms of how it can be used and how it can be misused. Uh, and that is where capacity building comes in. When you think about it as a technology, And that is where you need to be able to shape it into a more inclusive direction, right? And so right now, it's a technology that's biased toward English language, and it has less support for languages in the global South. And so there needs to be policy dealing with it as a technology and figuring out how to make it more inclusive, how to make it more accessible, and how to make it work for you. So when you think about that, when I work with media organizations, I always tell them, this applies only to media, is that AI is a terrible source of information, but it's great at processing information. So when you're using it for media purposes or for journalism purposes, it's better if you bring your own data that you've already verified and then use AI to process that data so you can check the output. So that's the perspective of AI as a technology, right? Now, there's the other side where AI is a platform wherein people actually get their information. And this is a big problem because the Philippines and Indonesia are both in the top 5 of ChatGPT users in the world. I have this favorite graph that I show. I wasn't able to put it in my slides, wherein the usage for ChatGPT increases whenever school starts in the Philippines, and it decreases during summer vacation. And so we already know who is using ChatGPT in the Philippines. Uh, but when we think about it as broadcasters and media practitioners and even university professors, right? The future audiences of our industry have already grown up using ChatGPT and other chatbots as a source of information. Now, the problem with that, there are two problems with that, right? The first is that they don't go to your website or your television broadcast anymore to get that information. The second problem with that is that ChatGPT is a lot dumber about Philippine and Indonesian issues than they are about American issues because they are trained on American data sets, right? So if you ask it a question about Indonesian history, it's probably going to get it wrong, or something about it will be wrong. Maybe something that is hard to detect because they're not trained on our libraries. They're not trained on our books. They're not trained on our newspapers, right? And so, if you're thinking about it mainly as someone concerned about the information that is getting to the young people in our population, you'd be concerned, right? So you have to think about policy in which those platforms are able to give good information to the audiences that they already have, right? But that's in conflict with what we want as broadcasters or media companies because we want them to pay for that information, and they don't care about that information, right? So it's a delicate balancing act when you think about these AI companies as platforms that provide information. That's something that government should be thinking about. In the United States, for example, at Harvard University, they are building a data set with verified information that they will give for free to any AI company so that the information there would be more accurate. Is that something we can do at a national level or a regional level here in ASEAN? We haven't even started that conversation. But yes, to answer your question, it's a very long answer. We should think about policy both ways, both as a technology and as a platform that provides information.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jamark. Before I, do you have any comments?
No, no, no.
Okay. Before I conclude the panel, do you have the final remarks in regards to policy, AI, adoption in industry?
Yes, when we talk about AI governance and AI regulation, um, there's so much more focus about what you can't do, uh, guardrails, and all of that is good. I think there's a lot of value in that about guardrails and regulation. Um, but a large part of the conversation that we're not having is the potential of this technology and the uneven diffusion of this technology. Um, and there needs to be a lot more discussion about how to build capacity and how to improve access to these technologies, especially for organizations that are struggling, like broadcast organizations across the board, across the world. There are issues when it comes to revenue, when it comes to trust, when it comes to viewership. And this technology can actually help address some of those issues, but the access is uneven. So when we talk about AI governance, let's not stop about, you know, its potential for harm and what we can do to mitigate those. But we need to think about how to make these technologies and these platforms more inclusive for those who can benefit the most from it. And those are the people who don't have as much resources as the bigger organizations.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jamark. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Today's discussion has highlighted a shared understanding across perspective that AI in broadcasting must be governed, not merely through technology, but through principle, institution, and public responsibility. Your final remarks highlight that issue. Uh, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank our distinguished expert for their clarity and generosity and all participants for their engagement. I now formally conclude this panel discussion and invite the KPI team to proceed with the formulation of the workshop recommendation. Thank you. I hand over to Pak Amin.
Okay, give a big applause for our international expert, and thank you, Mr. Jumark. I highlighted a very strong closing that from you, stating that we need the develop access and then building the connections, yeah, to implement the AI in the broadcasting sector. Then thank you also for Mr. Wisnu Tribo for remarkable in hosting today's discussions. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching to the end of our programs. I know you are very tired because we discussed a lot issues since yesterday, and then I see also one or two ASEAN delegates are already go to the airport because of you're going back to your country. But we believe that this event will be giving your key messages, yeah, that you will be bring to your own countries to be discussed furthermore, yeah, regarding the regulator, the regulatory, and then the broadcasting practices using the AI. Before I invite Pak Mada Sunarsa to give a closing, I'd like to say again thank you on behalf of KPI, and then wishing you have a very safe flight coming back to your country. So Pak Wisnu and then Mr. Cermak, please remain on the stage because we are going to have a photo session first. I'd like to invite Bli Mada Sunarsa.
Thank you, Mr. Amin. So earlier, I want to say that I apologize. Maybe my English is not as well, Mr. Amin, as a PIC, the great PIC. Thank you, dear all of delegation. It's great to be here. It's glad to be here. So I, representative of my institution, KPI, and representative of the government of Indonesia, I would like to say thank you very much for all delegation, all of speaker, moderators. I see from Malaysia, from Thailand, from Myanmar, from Timor Leste, and from Cambodia. And I hope all of the commission of KPI for next time we go to visit this country for the great event. So because this is the closing closing time, so I just short time, Mr. Amin. So I just want to say thank you for this event. So we will collaborate and we will arrange the conclusion to be a recommendation to our government, to all of stakeholders in broadcasting in Indonesia. So thank you. See you next time. Terima kasih.
Thank you also for the journalists who are coming for covering our today's event. So I'd like to invite all commissioners to have a photo session with speakers and then moderator.